vegetables that are brightly colored while reducing the less essential ones. Keeping up the whole grains instead as well. Nutrition and aging. Obviously, that's a whole big discussion, but my main point on that question is going to be ensuring that you keep that protein level super high. So there's a lot of conversation around that. There's muscle atrophy that happens naturally as we age. So continuing to do our strength training paired with our protein intake to keep those muscles up. And then the rest of the rules are pretty irrelevant as well. Intermittent fasting as a question. So I have received this question a lot as well from masters type athletes. And I think it is a very unique situation that depends on the individual and it depends on the scenario. As I said, I would prefer people to do their workouts fueled because you're going to feel slow and sluggish if you are not fueled with some carbohydrate. There is a whole conversation around health. So there is some individuals who may benefit in terms of a health perspective versus a performance perspective. And that might be something specific to the person that I can't really answer at this point. So for most of you, I would prefer you to go to a workout fueled properly. So the value of carbohydrate liquid replacement drinks during a 90-minute swim workout is a question. So if you can remember the graph that I gave you guys to look at with the timing, a 90-minute workout puts you in the criteria to have about 30 grams of carbohydrate per hour. So that would be the recommendation coming from the research that would show benefit for sure. Especially if you've gone in without a lot of fuel. If you've gone in, you've just eaten a big meal, then you probably don't need to have a ton of carbohydrate in your drink. I have a question specific here to a pre-diabetic type condition and concerns about sugar. So I want that person to remember that when you are training, your body is using the sugar immediately as fuel, and it doesn't process the same way in your body as it would if you were sitting on the couch having sugar. So keeping that in mind, the simple sugars are important for training purposes really only in that case. Otherwise, trying to focus on complex carbohydrates paired with protein, and that will keep the insulin levels lower. Reading some more of these questions. So suggestions for protein post-workout. Definitely protein post-workout is the proper time to have protein. As I said, you don't have to rush it unless you are doing double workouts that day. And anything that is convenient for you. If you are able to do fluid, then that's fantastic. I have recommended some people pack a little soy milk drink box. They can come where you don't have to have them in the fridge, and you can pack them in your swim bag and they won't go bad if they're not in the fridge. They're still quite palatable, even if they're a little bit warm. You know, mix that with a handful of almonds, those kinds of things. That's an easy sort of snack to have on the go. Otherwise, you can go home and have your proper meal at home with protein. If you're somebody who eats meat, obviously all the lean meats are great choices for protein. If you are, I have a vegetarian question here, so I'm just going to add on to this discussion. Vegetarian protein options would be, you know, soy products. Edamame beans is one of my favorite snacks. Great source of protein. Any of the other beans are actually really great sources of protein as well. Things like nuts and seeds, again, quinoa. If you are somebody who does dairy, the dairy sources, milk is a great option. It has about 7 grams of protein per serving. Taking a look at your different options. So even some of the pastas out there have small amounts of protein, but knowing what has protein in it so that you can pair things together and get a full serving is important. So maybe mixing some of your quinoa with some of the edamame beans, and then sprinkling on your almonds. So making a whole meal like that, so that you get a good mixture of different protein sources in your meal. I have a question about, should your diet differ if you're a sprinter versus a distance swimmer? I think this really is going to depend on your volume of training. So there's definitely sprinters who are still doing a ton of training, and that's what you're fueling is your training session. If you're racing, you don't need to be taking in additional carbohydrates as a sprinter. If you are racing as a distance swimmer, I have worked with open water swimmers who are doing, 10K swims, and most definitely that's a whole different strategy. If you're doing a 50-meter swim in the pool versus a 10K swim in an open water race, definitely your pre-workout nutrition is going to be quite a bit different, as well as during the swim if you're doing the 10K. But thinking mainly about the training, the amount of your protein should stay the same, as I mentioned, for most people, keeping that guideline of the 4 to 5 servings. Of the number there was about 0.3 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So you guys can do the math for your own body weight per serving. But as I mentioned, that works out to about 15 to 20 grams of protein per serving for most people. The thing that changes when you're doing more volume is the carbohydrates. So if you are doing high volume as a sprinter still, because you're in a higher status of training, you're just able to get in more volume, you want to take in the same amount that the person that's training for distance is taking in if you're doing the same volume of training. You're not changing your body composition by eating differently, I think maybe is what the question. Can I discuss the role of supplements? So that is a big question for a lot of people, and it probably requires a longer conversation. But the rule of thumb is basically that, I don't know if everybody can see that, my little battery thing just popped up. Of course, I'm not plugged in right now. So hopefully I can make it another few minutes. Maybe I'll go get my battery charger in a moment here, so I don't kick out on all of you. So the rule of thumb for supplements is to work on having your best nutrition from your food products first. And then if there is an identified deficiency, so I referred to iron and vitamin D, things like that. If you've identified a deficiency by doing blood work with your doctor, then most definitely supplements are important. So I think there's a lot of conversation probably around that, but it's a whole sort of bigger, longer conversation. So I'm going to stick with that for now. I think that's sort of covering a number of drinks. I mean, a number of questions. Sorry, I'm reading one of the questions here about electrolyte drinks. And I feel like I probably addressed that. If you're somebody who sweats quite a bit, then an electrolyte drink might be additionally beneficial for you. But if you are just, it's the cooler weather, you may not have been out in the sun, in the summertime, if you came to a workout after being outside working in the garden all day and it was 30 degrees, then you may be definitely wanting to be replacing those electrolytes because you would have sweat all day long already. Right now, coming to workout in the cold, probably okay to not need it unless you're going for longer than an hour to an hour and a half training. Now, my computer's going to talk about me. So, Dean, I'm wondering, I'm just going to leave for 1 minute and get my charger.
No worries, no worries.
Okay.
You've done a great job getting those questions that were sent in earlier, so that's great. And we did have a couple in the chat, so we'll come back to some of those that are in the chat. So
okay, perfect.
Go get your power juice there, and is that what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I'll just be right back.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks.
No problem. So we'll get to some of the questions that are in the chat, and Cheryl will, and hopefully that she's covered off quite a few of the ones that did pop in. So hopefully that's going to help. And I know it was a bit choppy. I don't know how it was for you there, but I found that if I turned my microphone on, then everything was much smoother. I have no idea what that's all about. So, anyways, that's the
Sorry,
tech.
Dean, were you saying I was getting glitchy there?
Well, there was moments, and then I thought, maybe I'll start pushing buttons, and I pushed the mute button, unmute, and all of a sudden you were smooth. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but I figured it out quickly. You were smooth.
Okay, well,
You were very
let
smooth
me
all
know
the
if
way
you
through.
missed anything.
No, I think it was there. It was just a little bit choppy, and then I turned on my mic, and things were smooth. So I have no clue. No clue. So
Right.
you've done a very good job, one, describing a lot of this. Lots of things to consider. I do like your one slide on the 3 R's. I think, keeping things simple, things that we can grab a hold of. I think that's quite um, appropriate. I think I would also, before we get into some of these questions, I would also say that obviously if someone wants to know a bit more, they should contact someone such as yourself, um, to get better advice for their own particular situation, because we know there's all kinds of things out there, and we'll call them short, sometimes we'll call them shortcuts, sometimes they are state of the art ways, but they're also written for a different maybe level of athlete or other conditions. So I think if people are inclined to dig a little deeper, you better to get some advice along the true advice and be counseled along the way, such as someone like Cheryl. So
For sure. There's very specific individual scenarios. And there's some blanket information for sure, but there's unique situations for even within the same sort of group and cohort of athletes. There's unique situations all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So we had a question from Dan Thompson, and anyways, he had he loves smoothies in the morning, and basically he was just getting a bit concerned with the amount of frozen fruit that he might be consuming, and maybe around the refined sugar piece. So is there some alternatives that he can still keep his regime on, or?
Well, I definitely think so. Frozen fruit is natural sugar. So if you're just sticking with the actual fruit, I would say sort of a cup of fruit is probably plenty for one smoothie. Once you're getting a cup and a half of fruit, thinking about the amount of frozen, so that might be sort of 2 small smoothies worth, might be enough. But natural sugar is still an awesome way, like the fruit is an awesome way to get in different vitamins and minerals and different micronutrients. We just don't want to add any additional refined sugars. So you're not pouring in sugar on top of that, or not mixing it with, juices and things like that.
Yeah, and Dan had another question. He's concerned about losing his muscle mass because he's getting a bit older. Is there any?
That's true.
So definitely continuing to keep those strength sessions up. Hopefully Mina will give you some tips on that as well. But the protein piece paired with those strength sessions is the main way to keep the muscle mass on. That 20 grams about per serving. Somebody who's a little bit older, even those 5 times a day, assuming that you're doing some of the work to be pairing that with the strength type sessions. That's the ideal and the main way to keep the muscle on, for sure.
Yeah, and my commentary for Dan is that he's taken on this over distance training stuff, swimming in lakes all the time and everything. He's lost that sprinter edge.
Well, and you're definitely training different muscle fibers then. If that's what you're thinking about in terms of your power, training differently is going to produce different abilities. So you can definitely train, fast twitch muscle fibers by doing power and explosive movements. And if that's kind of more of the question, then that's more of a Mina.
Yeah. And it will be a good tie-in. I think we're hitting all the high spots of what is important for every level of participant / athlete, around the mental, the physical attributes, and definitely nutrition, as you pointed out. And a question from Katie was around open water swimming. You touched on it a little bit, but just around a couple. Not that I'm not sure how many people are doing open water right now. One or two are still hitting the water. I don't know if you know a guy named Steve Halford. He was just in the lake this weekend.
Brave soul.
Yeah, brave soul. Anyways, just wondering some, simple key recommendations, guidance around obviously the hydrating piece. And depends on how far and how long and the conditions. But fueling before and during open water swims. This is, you've dealt with the triathlons, triathletes, even though their swims are quite short in a lot of their pieces. But yeah, looking at a 10K or 5, not so much 10K, but maybe they're looking at between that 3 and 5K mark.
So for sure, I mean, there's different scenarios here, whether it's a supported swim and it's a training session, or even if it's a race, the longer open water swims are going to be supported. And then you definitely want to be taking in your carbohydrate and electrolyte drink in that time. Definitely you might want to practice and try having things like gels and other ways to get in carbohydrates and find out what works for your body. I've worked with Ironman athletes quite a bit, and they have a 4K swim. And typically there's no support in a 4K swim. For an Ironman, you get to drink, sipping on your fluids ahead of time. So if you're doing something of that type of distance and you don't have the option to have support out there and you're not going to be drinking during the swim, then most definitely you want to be sipping leading right up until your event or till your swim. And that we would want to have your carbohydrate and electrolyte drink because it's absorbed into the body better. You're not going to need to pee right away because it's absorbing into the cells versus going straight into your bladder. And then, having a small bit of a carbohydrate option right before you get in the water. Banana is my number one choice for the most part. Some people have all sorts of different types of sports products that they prefer, and it's whatever works with your body. But most definitely fluid leading right up until and sipping. So I didn't talk about hydration as much, but my usual sort of discussion includes making sure that you do small sips throughout the day. Your body can only absorb a little bit of fluid at once into the cells. The rest, if you drank a whole water bottle at once, for example, you're going to absorb about 150 milliliters of fluid into your actual cells and body. The rest is going to go into your bladder and out. So keeping that in mind, that you can only absorb a small amount at a time. So every 15 minutes or so, you want to be taking in about 150 mils. And most, it's going to be better absorbed if you're taking it with carbohydrates and or electrolytes.
Yeah.
So
and that's
for the open water swimmer, staying on top of it.
Yeah. But that whole hydration piece and the little sips during the whole or leading up is almost a daily thing to help them for their evening practice or
Absolutely.
I think those are sometimes I can tell you from I do not drink enough water constantly, so that's an issue. And Andy had a question just around some of the reading that he's been doing and around BCAA, branched chain amino acids. Mm-hmm. And it's like everything you read out there. There's all kinds of stuff, and some of it is pretty interesting and cutting edge, and some of it maybe isn't just required. But little comment on this?
Not too much of a comment. Like there's a lot, as you said, there's a lot of different types of supplements that are advertised to help in different ways. I would say for the most part, people in this group don't need to be taking any of those things. And there's no additional benefit to probably breaking down your protein into these branched chain amino acids versus just having a piece of chicken.
There you go. Have the chicken. Now here's the question that fits this master's bunch. How detrimental is alcohol to training?
Ooh. Yeah, I don't get to talk about that one as much. No. It's definitely, fluid is coming into your body. So it is considered hydrating you, but it is definitely not an ideal source of hydration, as you all know. So there's lots of stuff coming out in health discussions these days about red wine, etc. And I think the news and the things you're hearing outside are probably going to give you the most as much information as I will. I have people come to me sort of trying to reduce it because, they've got a beer gut or those kinds of things. Definitely that's going to affect you. You don't want to have those extra calories because you're drinking additional alcohol. But if you're keeping your amount to a minimum and you're being safe, then you're enjoying life. It's going to help your mental state. There's probably not too much from my perspective that you don't already know.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to take the fun out of the masters, fun friendship and fellowship and things like that. But Bud C, right? That was Bud's question. I'm really shocked that he asked that question. But hopefully, Bud, as long as it's in moderation and you're living life well, that's what really matters. Let's see. Oh, this is one that came up earlier, but cause tension headaches day after a workout, day after.
Yeah, there are so many possible reasons for headaches. I would say number one strategy is to ensure you're properly hydrated. And by that, as I sort of mentioned, you don't always necessarily want to just keep drinking water. Sometimes just drinking water is not helpful to that person. I've worked with people that, have dizzy spells, for example, as well. And you may need to increase the sodium in there, assuming you don't have any blood pressure health issues in that regard. But the sodium may help to get that fluid into your body a little bit better. But there are so many other reasons for headaches that I can't possibly go into answering that question, really. Ensuring you're hydrated and make sure you're fueled is this nutrition strategies from my perspective.
Okay. And obviously, if it continues, they should probably talk to their doctor, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely an area. If you have regular headaches, you want to explore the reasons. I mean, I mentioned that as a possible consequence of not having some of enough nutrients, and so that would be something you would explore with your doctor, getting blood work done, etc.
Okay. Comment came in just regarding you'll be able to send me the slide deck. We'll PDF it and then we can post it. Is that okay? Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, and then there was like they would like to see your website on the screen or post it, or we can send it out again.
Oh yeah, I didn't really put it anywhere.
Yeah, we tried to get it up on some of the advertisement, but yeah. So I do have it's
Cheryl Ross Sports Science. So there's lots of S's in there. It's all Cheryl with an S and then sportscience.com.
.com, that's right. Yeah. I think I have it. Yeah, we'll make sure that it gets posted alongside with this slide deck. Now, is there some other questions that have been raised, and just either turn your camera on so we can see you and wave, and then we can do it that way if you have a question to add. Oh, let's see, counting calories, macro, would that be advantageous from a performance point of view? Counting the calories and things like that.
I definitely work with athletes who, are trying to adjust their weight for whatever reasons. Looking at specifically, how much protein are we getting, how much carbohydrate, and looking at the whole picture though, as I said, micronutrients are often forgotten in the discussion here. But I mean, there's reasons to look at it carefully for, a week or two, but I definitely don't recommend it on a regular daily basis all the time.
Yeah, those are always it's moderation and balance and all those type of things. Any other questions? Okay. All right, here's a question that came in around more or less if you're on the vegetarian diet or vegan. Just read that you mentioned some of the key legumes or things that provide protein, such as the nuts and so on, and the avocados and things like that. Is there any supplements that if there could be you know, some not feeling they're getting the protein they need.
So, I mean, there are supplements. Obviously, there's the protein supplements out there. So there's a lot of conversation around whether we need to be looking at that or not. But somebody who's vegetarian and struggling to maybe get enough protein, they might look into a protein powder type option. Keeping in mind, if you're racing at any kind of level that requires, you know, elite sport, you want to be looking at safe for sport options. So the best way to kind of ensure that, I mean, there's making sure it's safe for sport certified by looking for NSF certified products. But for the most part, my recommendation is to look at the ingredients and ensure it's just protein powder. If you're getting something that has a mixture of a whole bunch of other things included in any supplement, then it might be a bit worrisome. But there's lots of different options for supplements, and that, you know, might be specific to the person who requires it.
Okay. Mario had a question, when traveling and stuff like that. When are you going to do any traveling, Mario? There's not that stuff is going on right now. But when we do get back to that next normal or whatever we want to call it, how do you keep the quality of your service compared to your normal training week? How do you? That's the thing right now. Travel is not really on our mind, other than we wish we could. But yeah, there is something to that. How you keep your routine as normal as possible.
It is definitely a fine art, and, you know, bring in as many things as you can from home, snacks. There's one thing I didn't mention, but I like to cook, or I like to bake, you know, for example, muffins with almond meal. There's a lot, so other protein sort of snacks that you can make at home. Little seed balls that you can make with different options of mixtures of flaxseed, chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, etc. And having lots of those really healthy snack options with you, so that you don't find yourself starving and then purchase something that isn't going to be a good option. But also, just when you're at the travel location, going to the local grocery store and purchasing easy to grab and go type vegetable snacks, you know, a bag of carrots, and you know, bring a knife with you so you can cut up a pepper and eat peppers as snacks. Like, there are ways to do it. You just have to think and kind of plan ahead. And if you can get to a grocery store, it's going to be the best option. If you're going to a restaurant, then you definitely want to avoid, you know, the lot of sauces and the foods that have additional oils and things that you wouldn't normally be eating, and stick with as familiar foods as possible all the time.
Good. Another question came in around, just a general multivitamin. Is that a good start for micronutrients?
I would probably prefer people to just eat the variety of fruits and vegetables. You eat a lot of different colors in your fruits and vegetables, and you're probably getting most of them covered. Now, I sort of talked about some of the nutrients that are often deficient in athletes. If you're a vegetarian, you probably already know this, but you need to make sure you're taking probably additional B12. Those kinds of things you want to check in with your doctor and do your blood work first to know how much you're taking. But a person who's eating a variety of foods in their diet, or and you're not restricted, then I would prefer you to just eat all the colors, all the different nutrients you can through actual foods.
Okay, another question came in just around prepackaged shake products, or such as isogenics and other products that are on the market. Any thoughts around that?
I would tend to avoid those generally.
Food is best.
Sorry?
Food is best, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's where I'm like, you know what, just a glass of milk. If you're somebody who has dairy, and if you're somebody who, you know, for a quick fluid, like, as I mentioned, there's little drink boxes of soy milk. You can have a quick drink of soy milk. It's got a hit of protein. Mix that with a handful of almonds. That's going to give you so much better nutrition than those prepackaged mixtures.
Oops. Let's see. Okay, I think Just a keto diet. Any thoughts on that, or paleo diet? I think that was one of the questions came in earlier as well.
Oh yeah, I did miss that one. So like, obviously my talk, I refer to varieties of carbohydrates. So I definitely would prefer people to include those in their diets. Reducing, as I sort of mentioned, the non-essential carbohydrates or the less essential carbohydrates when you are not doing high volumes of training. But if you are doing high volumes of training, you need carbohydrates to fuel your sessions. It's the source of energy for you.
Well, I think that pretty much covered it. I think it's been quite, I think what it does is it sort of helps us focus in on what we can be doing. Gives us maybe a bit of a distraction from the worrisome challenges that we have in our day-to-day, or the concern about just the general concern of what's going on with this pandemic. So if we can I think you've given a focus to the people that were on the call. That's fantastic, and they'll start to make those adjustments and tie it in with our next talk, which will be with Mina on December 5th. The combination of what you described tonight, Cheryl, I think will lend itself quite well to help keep a balance of I still like how you described the 3 R's. I think that's a pretty simple thing to follow, but I think creating the whole package, and maybe in the new year we'll come back with a different piece on some of these key topics that we've been talking about. So any lasting tidbits, Cheryl?
Well, and most definitely there is so much we can cover, and I obviously couldn't cover everything there is to learn about nutrition. But as Dean is saying, you can control this piece right now. There's a lot out of our control, but we can definitely control what we are putting in our bodies and how we are impacting our health in that way. So keep up the colorful fruits and vegetables, keep up those protein sources, and that way, the hydration. Those are the 3 big things for you guys.
Perfect. Well, I think this has been great, Cheryl. Again, thank you very much for your time and definite insight. Cheryl works with our performing athletes that are in our academy. She spends quite a bit of time with them and the coaches to assist, and so she has a very good grasp on sport, definitely within what I know of swimming, but definitely all the way around. So we will make sure her contacts are available to you. And just a little commercial break here. We have that Masters Performance Ranking that we've put out there that give you a bit of a challenge inside your training sessions, that if you can get a watch out and time yourself, or get a teammate to time yourself, or your coach, if you have a coach, and then we'll have a submitted in, and we will create a ranking so that at least we see keeping engagement, maybe a bit of motivation as we try to stumble along during, as we call it, not the colorful fruits, but the color pieces to our provincial regulations, colors. So that's happening. And again, December 5th will be our next webinar. So really appreciate it, Cheryl. Thanks everyone for making time. Hopefully you are back in the water. Hopefully you're back in the water in a safe manner, and it continues. Swimming has been fortunate. We haven't felt some of the unfortunate impacts other activities, recreational or sport activities, have felt. And so hopefully that will continue to maintain, and hopefully one point in time to progress, so that we can see each other on the deck sooner than later. So anyways, thank you very much, Cheryl. Thank you everyone for attending, and we'll get the information out. I believe that we'll be sending out a sort of a feedback questionnaire out to you, and then we're always trying to be better. So anyways, thanks everyone.
Thanks so much, Dean.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, Cheryl.